especially large corporations or those that employ 200 workers or more with earnings about 100 million pesos should be charged with an excess profit tax, given that they benefit from the COVID-19 pandemic. So how can we tell if a corporation is benefiting from a pandemic? If a large corporation is enjoying a revenue above certain rate during this pandemic, let's say 15% increase, then that large corporation is making a huge profit from this pandemic. So if such corporation is earning revenues higher than that specified rate of profit, then I believe it is just fair and equitable that that certain corporation should be charged with a higher income tax. In our situation in our country today, many businesses have closed down due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, has reported that 90,000 businesses have closed down as a result of the pandemic. According to a recent SWS survey, around 27.3 million Filipinos are unemployed due to the COVID-19 crisis. Besides those, the government also incurred additional expenditures such as the cash aid given to the poor families, which amounted to a whopping 100 billion pesos. Thus, due to these circumstances, the economy of the country has suffered greatly. But amidst businesses closing down and suffering financial losses, there are many businesses that have profited greatly. Industries such as e-commerce, hand sanitizer industry, and supermarkets did very well during this pandemic. An example of which is Pure Gold, a chain of supermarkets which enjoyed an increase in profit by 16.8% in the first quarter of 2020. Imposing an excess profit tax on these companies will help alleviate the negative impact of the coronavirus on the Philippine economy. These taxes will also serve as emergency revenue for the government, especially in this time of crisis. These taxes will also support governmental expenditures. For all the reasons I have stated, I therefore conclude that the government should impose excess profit tax, and I highly and strongly believe that we should win this round. I rest my case.
Thank you. So the leader of the opposition, you have 7 minutes to present your side on the matter.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Theoretically, the main reason why we engage the business is to generate income. Isn't having additional separate tax due to your increased income unfair? I think it is. Good morning. I am Arvin Alexis Sumabal, the leader of opposition, and this House does not support excess income taxes on corporations that derive a significant profit from a pandemic. Now, here are my arguments. First, it is not the corporation's fault to have the talent and capacity to generate significant income during trying times like this. COVID-19, as it is not anyone's fault. It is not the corporation's fault, either those who have significant income or those who have not. It is not those small businesses who continues to operate or those who have no option but to shut down. It is not any private entity's fault, nor the government. The point is, why impose an excess tax on those corporations who have an advantage on the current state, specifically the pandemic? Business is business, and businesses should aim on maximizing their profit. If it so happens that some generated significant income, can't they just enjoy it because it is them who made it possible? Do they really have to pay additional separate tax just because others are not doing well and because we are experiencing a pandemic? As Carter Glass said, it only puts penalty in brains, energy, and enterprise. Are we not allowed to have our wise efforts and ways to generate income even if it's pandemic that we will put penalty? It is normal for a business to exert effort and brains to have increased income. And why would we take portion of those significant income? Isn't having an increased tax for having higher income enough to help the people? Isn't the corporation hiring workers and actually paying them enough? Isn't the charities and donations some corporations with significant income enough to help those who are in need? To name some, here are 3 corporations that helped the community during quarantine. First, Starbucks. Starbucks has extended their mental health benefits. In partnerships with Lyra Health, Starbucks is offering its partners personalized confidential mental health care, 20 free in-person or video sessions every year for partners and each of their eligible family members, online scheduling with most providers available within 2 weeks, and access to a provider network of mental health therapists and coaches. Second, McDonald's has stated that it will cover sick leave for any employees at corporate-owned locations who are asked to quarantine for weeks. The Boites Foundation has also set up a fundraising page called Help Our Health Workers Fight COVID-19 to raise money for PPE sets in coordination with UP, Mindanao Foundation, and the Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service Foundation. It is not anyone's fault why all this happened, and that includes them, the corporations. They have their own ways to help. So why establish an access tax? Also, it is emphasized that business have additional material expenses during quarantine. Aside from the cost of operating, they have also to allocate cost to maintain safety in the workplace. Thermometers, constant disinfections, barriers, and a lot more are needed. Moreover, technologies to scan QRs are also needed. They will need to quickly and accurately identify infections and make sure employees, contractors, suppliers are isolated in order to ensure business continuity. Putting testing regimes in place acts in the interest of the company, but also benefits the wider community. Second, my second argument is equality is not equity. Meaning, when we say that access taxes can promote income equality, that's not true at all. We can only attain equal income through taxes when it is subject to all people. But this access tax obviously is a way for the government to profit from those who work hard to have significant income. It is unfair because it indirectly gives them penalty because they are doing well. Lastly, it is the government's responsibility to stabilize the economy. For us, the opposition team, giving additional separate tax aside from their existing payable is too much. It is the government's responsibility to stabilize the economy, not just the private entities. Aside from the fact that they have an advantage in the current state of the country, it is also a fact that higher income for them means higher production for the consumption of the consumers or services. Them having a higher income is not a one-way road. If they did not operate, who would fulfill those consumers' needs? Again, theoretically, the main reason why we engage the business is to generate income. Isn't having additional separate tax due to increased income unfair? I think it is. I rest my case.
Thank you. Okay, so let us now hear from our second speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister of the government side. You have 7 minutes.
Good morning. So this house supports excess profit taxes. So taxation is the inherent power of the state to impose and demand contribution upon persons, properties, or rights for the purpose of generating revenues for public purposes. A tax should be an enforced contribution, generally payable in cash, levied on a person or property, and is proportionate in character. It must also be by the state which has jurisdiction over the person or property levied for the public purpose and must be levied by the lawmaking body of the state. In the Philippines, the legislation, also known as the House of Congress, is the lawmaking body that imposes taxation as supported in the Tax Reform Act of 1997 or the National Revenue Code of the Philippines, amended by the Republic Act number 8424, an act amending the National Internal Revenue Code as amended and for other purposes. So before I go through my argument, let me just go through the argument of the opposition. So the opposition said that it is the accumulation of higher profits of some corporations are due to their talent to generate income. But during this pandemic, our house strongly opposes that because this is not a mere talent for accumulating profit, but rather the opportunity of these industries to accumulate profit, especially in this pandemic time. And next, companies are the one who made it possible for the accumulation of extra profit. Well, generally, it is about the business operations, but without the consumers, I think this would be, our house thinks this would be impossible. So the secondary purposes of taxation are compensatory purposes to reduce excessive inequalities of wealth, to maintain high level of employment, to control inflation, and this inflation or and regulatory purposes for sumptuary prices, or to implement the police power of the state to promote the general welfare. So one of the principles that governs taxation is the ability to pay principle, which connotes that holding of taxes should relate with the people's income or their ability to pay. That is, people with greater income or wealth and can afford to pay more taxes should be taxed at a higher rate than people with less wealth. As for this case, goes down to the fact that this House supports excess profit taxation for big corporations having profit deemed to be excess once it exceeds a certain percentage, and that only corporations who are benefiting from the current situation be taxed. Corporate income tax is applied only to a company's profits, not its total revenues. In other words, businesses that are losing money or merely breaking even pay no corporate income tax at all. This House supports excess income taxes on corporations that derive a significant profit from a pandemic because it discourages abuse of government support programs for businesses, tamp down on price gouging, and raise public revenues from large, profitable corporations that are booming during the crisis. As noted, it also has the benefit of discouraging destructive price gouging by limiting the opportunity to profit from this behavior, and it could similarly help prevent abuse of government programs intended to support struggling businesses. Going back to the first quarter of this year, 2020, where there has been a rapid increase in the prices of essential products such as masks, alcohol, and a markup in pharmaceuticals and medicines, the best system to soften the impact of inequality is to impose an additional taxation to corporations who takes advantage of this institution. With a 375 billion government spending this year, I think the opposition's stand about certain companies like Starbucks helping the government does not equate or compensate the spending of the government. So excess profit tax regulates the economic sector of the country because it creates an opportunity for the government to gain revenue amidst the pandemic by taxing these corporations who are highly benefited by the situation. This maintains the equal mutual benefit of both the consumer and the producer. These large companies gaining more profit than usual from the consumers, and then the government taxing these corporations for the needs of the people. Also, excess profit tax have been deemed to be successful, especially during the World War I and World War II, where countries such as Canada, United Kingdom, United States have implemented this by taxing corporations who are selling warfare equipment, and that has helped the crisis during the World War II. And same as today in the pandemic, those corporations that are highly benefited from this situation shall also be taxed too. In a theory of justice of Rawls, introduced a universal system of fairness and a set of procedures for achieving it. He advocated a practical, empirically verifiable system of governments that would be political, social, and economic in its effects. So one of its procedural steps is number 4, maximizing the welfare of the most disadvantaged persons. So clearly, in this pandemic time, the most disadvantaged persons are consumers, and it is just right to make these large corporations who have benefited during this pandemic to compensate for the struggle of these people by in a way by the government of taxing them. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted how deeply dependent we are on each other. It was always clear that no corporation or individual accrues profits or wealth on their own, but only with the help of workers and the critical public investments that make our society and economy tick. All of us who create this wealth should share in it, and corporate profits during a crisis are a good place to start by ensuring that a few do not gain from the sacrifices of the many, as stated by Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1940. So as I've mentioned earlier, this excess profit tax also helps the government by keeping the economy away from price gouging or windfall gains. So windfall gains are taking advantage of an fortuitous event by earning more than is what labeled normal. So also this excess profit tax help prevent inequalities and unjust enrichment at the expense of no one. So in order to compensate for the corporations who have been qualified for excess profit tax, the government also has a proposition to have tax relief or tax holiday after the pandemic is all done. So these corporations who are excessively profit tax can have or can be exempted from a certain period of time by tax because of their contribution to the government by the means of excess profit tax. So that's all. We rest our case.
Thank you. Now, the second speaker, the deputy leader of the opposition side, will have 7 minutes to present.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Am I audible? Loud and clear daw, okay.
Loud and
I will
clear.
start now. Mahatma Gandhi stated that our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Christine Joy Balubalo, the Deputy Leader of the House of the Opposition. First of all, I would like to thank the House of the Government for bringing up the intention for us to have a better society that will not happen according to their will. We, the opposition, is here to prove this later on. Before I begin my argument, I would like to mention the flaws that the House of the Government have stated. First, the Prime Minister of the government team stated that it is for the emergency fund of the government. But are you not thinking for the emergency fund of the corporation in case this pandemic will continue? I will discuss this later further. Second one is it is proportionate in character, but meaning there is a firm computation in taxes. We don't need to put excess in taxes anymore because there is a firm computation in our taxation, right? Another one, the deputy prime minister stated that it is not a talent but an opportunity. However, the best thing for a corporation is to grab this opportunity because we have this business to grab opportunity and to make profit, right? Now, I will go on and explain why we definitely disagree to the given motion. I have 3 points of argument to be given. First one, excess income can be used as recovery fund of the businesses. Due to the uncertainties of this pandemic, opportunity cost of lost income is high. A big portion of the normal income has been lost during the enhanced community lockdown. On that point, the moment our establishments have the opportunity to revive their unfortunate losses, would it be unjust to use their excess income for excess tax instead of using it for their own good, knowing that they are already paying correct amount of tax as their obligation and think that that will also help the government? Remember, these companies already provide the needs and wants of the society during this pandemic. It is already a win-win situation for the government, the corporation, and the people surrounding us. Second point, uncertainties of excess taxes. Reality speaking, we cannot hide that there are funds that is nowhere to be found. As what Jacob Bronowski said, no science is immune to the infection of politics and the corruption of power. As a businesswoman of this industry, why would I risk to give my excess income into the things that I am not sure where would my money will be? I can provide and help more if I will do my own actions so as the government will do theirs. I can give food to the household, I can give food to my employees, I can support charities. It will be more efficient and effective that this excess income derived from this pandemic will be used for their future obligations. At least I can see where my money are going. Third point, this will serve not only as a recovery fund, but also as emergency fund. As clock's still ticking and the pandemic is coming worse, it is like a time bomb that will explode if pandemic is still continues. Pandemic is an act of God and not of man. As what the Deputy Prime Minister said, it is from a fortuitous event. We don't know when will this end and how far it can cause more crisis leading to economic recession. And because of that, many businesses will file bankruptcy if that will happen. Most of the businesses already have existing obligations that needs to be paid. And their unexpected stagnant income plus bigger overhead that they are paying as of today to continue to run the business. Before I end my argument, I will leave the questions that would it still be appropriate if the government will ask for excess income tax? We believe not. Isn't it fair and just for the corporation? We also believe not. Therefore, the House is strongly argued that instead of paying excess taxes, they can use it as their emergency fund that will benefit the economy in the latter days. As we always said, we gain from fortuitous event because we are already we stand here as a corporation. We build a business as a corporation to gain profit. I rest my case.
Thank you. The third speaker, the government whip, shall have his 7 minutes to speak.
So, good morning, everyone. Now, I will first touch what the previous speaker has said about the emergency fund or the recovery fund that the corporation may use after March. But saying that the emergency fund of the corporation in case this pandemic continues, but does that mean that they will still continue to earn as well? Because they can still exploit the opportunity, which is this pandemic, such as the pharmaceuticals, the alcohols, the masks, and etc. Now, I will go to my argument. So to wrap up things a bit is that this House support excess income taxes on corporation that derive a significant profit from this pandemic is because we need to look for the bigger picture, not just during this pandemic, but also for the post-pandemic phase. We also have to bear in mind that the taxes we will tax later, the taxes we will just tax those corporations who will be benefited, who benefited during this pandemic. So with that, I want to provide this that the tax collection by the BIR declined by almost a fourth year-on-year to 874.9 billion at the end of May. Furthermore, collection from big corporations recorded 189.5 billion, which is 31.7 lower and 26.4 below its target. And the total collection declined at 30%. Revenues fall 156 billion short of collection. According to the press release of the Bureau of Treasury, the national government outstanding debt rocketed to 9,056.06 billion, which is composed of 32% external and 68% domestic, which the government borrowed more to finance government programs for COVID crisis. For expenditures that totaled 353 billion expenses, cash aid that according to CNN, it is spent for the first and second tranche of the social and relation program, the Bayanihan grants, the budget for respective agencies, provision for foods and other needs for subsistence during lockdown.
Oh, ma'am.
So it will go back we will go back to the purpose that tax is the lifeblood of the business. So the country needs to raise funds and revenue to meet the needs of the country and its people. So the data provided with the increase of expenditures in light of the pandemic, it must be put into mind that the idea of fiscal adequacy, that sources of revenue should be sufficient to meet the demands of public expenditures, which suggests that during this time, excess tax should be
Ready time po. Sorry.
What?
So the time already elapsed. So that's it for the government whip. So may we now have the Tim, is it already 7 minutes? Because
naka-timer ako ng dire-diretso chug 7 minutes na.
I think wala pa pong 7 minutes po. It's only been 3 minutes.
Sige.
baka na, lang Tim.
Because we
Chugs,
started at 10:58 po.
mag-start na ako 3 minutes. Chugs.
Sige, go. Sorry.
Sige, mag-start
sorry,
ako ng 3 minutes,
Okay.
Okay, you can now continue. Sorry.
Continue. As our Deputy Prime Minister said while back, generally speaking, even looking back, previous pandemic cases which paralyzed the economy the same way today, steps were taken to mitigate the negative effects of the pandemic, one of which is the tax and fiscal policy, and supported by the OECD studies this year, the tax policy, or which the post policy can contribute to the covering of the cost of the crisis and responses to it for post-pandemic, which this excess tax can be pushed. So furthermore, this is also confirmed with the critic made by the University of Chicago. Excess profit tax can reduce or prevent monopoly profits. So this means that even if many corporations or most corporations are losing money due to COVID-19 crisis, there are still those corporations that are earning enormous profits due to crisis by that earning profit above its normal rate, as it can prevent pushing or going through with the excess profit tax. It can prevent corporate winners from achieving this form of opportunistic and just enrichment. So this house strongly believes that we should impose or support excess income taxes on corporations that derive a significant profit from the pandemic. I rest my case.
Thank you, Government Whip. Sorry for the technical difficulty. So, may we now have the third speaker, the Opposition Whip. You have 7 minutes.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Opposition Whip.
Okay, good day. I am Marcia Tilia, the Opposition Whip of this House, which disagrees to the motion of imposing the excess income taxes on corporations that derive significant profit from the pandemic. But before I will start my supporting arguments, I would like to lay down a rebuttal first. So about the statement said earlier about the excess tax happening when the company earns more than their normal rate of income during crisis. So that argument really brought us to a realization. If they would argue that these companies must pay more because they are receiving more, how about those corporations producing seasonal products? Let us say, manufacturers of Christmas products. Why didn't the government charge an excess tax for their excess earnings during the seasons? If you would argue that during those seasons or during those times there were no crisis, then that is exactly our point. If the government did not charge excess taxes during those times, why charge taxes to those corporations earning higher than normal despite this pandemic, right? We believe that it is just unfair. So to start my supporting arguments, I actually have three. The first one is a business is a profitable institution. The second one is this would only discourage effort from the corporation to maximize profit. And the last one is paying the tax properly is already a big help for the nation. So to start my point, profit is a business's greatest possession. So this pandemic for them is an opportunity to earn, and grabbing that chance is their best option. So the wheel of fate, just like what was stated earlier, that we should not focus on this pandemic alone. How about How about the future? So the wheel of fate tells us that life would always have its highs and lows. So it isn't just for them to pay more just because they are receiving more now and others are not. So what if their downfalls come? So why not dedicate these earnings for possible losses in the future? Because as we all know, change is the only constant thing in the world. Moving on to my next point, we believe that this strategy of the government to raise funds will only dismay these corporations. So I mean, if I am a corporation, why would I take risk of functioning 100% this pandemic despite a lot of risk if they would only charge me a higher tax? Of course not. I would rather perform below my normal capacity to pay the tax that I've been paying averagely. So also, isn't tax a portion of the corporation's earning? So the higher their earnings are this pandemic, the higher the tax the government yields. So would I be wrong if we would look at this context of being unfair if the government pushes this excess tax? And lastly, as long as these corporations are paying the proper amount of tax, then that is definitely it. Exhausting more than what our tax law has provided is prejudicial. They may have raised a higher profit, but those came with risks. The virus itself is already a big problem. We think bids above earnings compensate their effort during this crisis. So to summarize our stand, this pandemic is nobody's fault. It is not the corporation's fault if he is earning more or less during this crisis. A business is an economic institution, just like how tax works in the nation as its bloodline, and so is profit for the company. So if they are paying tax properly, then that's enough. Forcing them to pay more despite this pandemic comes with a higher risk than normal. We believe these positive fluctuations of their earnings are enough to compensate for their bravery of taking the risk despite this pandemic. I rest my case.
Thank you. Now the opposition will be given 4 minutes to reply.
Good morning again. So this is why we should win. First, taxation has its own computation. Therefore, it is not necessary that we would establish separate additional tax for those who are thriving just because it is pandemic. Higher income means higher tax yield for them. And for us, that is already enough. Second, each one can reach one. We can help one another to lift one another. It is unfair that only them, the thriving companies, will contribute for the better. We can all help if we want to. We have our own ways to help. That is so much more equitable for all. Third and last, business is business again. It is only normal that they will generate profit, actually, that they will maximize their profit because that's what businesses do. What is not normal and fair is to cut those portion aside from the tax payable that they are already paying. So again, we are the opposition team and we say no to excess income taxes on corporations that derive a significant profit from a pandemic. Rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now the government's reply. You have 4 minutes.
Okay, good morning again. So let me just wrap up some of the points of the opposition team. So I think the opposition has forgotten that this excess profit tax is computed by considering the above normal income of businesses. So this will be the excess profit will be deducted from the normal profit, and that portion will be then multiplied by the percentage that is required by the governing body or the legislation regarding the excess profit taxes. Now, as for the emergency fund, I think also the opposition has forgotten that emergency fund is already computed as presented in the financial statements of each company. So I think it's not it's not necessary that they should prepare for this because this is already computed. This is already computed. And again, let me wrap up the points of our house supporting the stand that excess profit tax should be implemented because first and foremost, tax is imposed. It is regulated in all business corporations, and according to the concept of taxation, on its one of its principles and theory. So we have here the ability to pay principle that when a business generates a profit more than or above its normal income, it is just and right that they must pay or be compensated for that excess given the situation in the pandemic that they have. Most of the corporations or some of the corporations have taken advantage of the situation, even hoarding supplies, increasing the prices of these products. So it is just and right that they must be compensated for this. And also because if excess profit tax creates a balance in the economy, it prevents it prevents imbalances that favors the large corporations that would benefit for this, because if these large corporations would not be compensated according to the excess profit tax, then they might progress, and other industries that do not thrive during this pandemic might be forgotten, or they might lose the industry they are in. And then next, it also the excess profit tax prevents price gouging with or windfall gains, which is very rampant today in the pandemic times. Given the situation before as compared to World War II, which is exactly the same now, that there are unnecessary increase in prices of the products that's very essential, especially medical products or goods. And again, um, uh, um, tax is a fiscal policy, and a fiscal policy, the fiscal adequacy of the tax means that the sources of revenue should be sufficient to meet the demands of the public expenditures, and there must be an equality or theoretical justice as proposed by Rawls in his one of his principles, and as proposed in one of the theories of the law or the taxation in the Philippine law. So again, this pandemic is not, or the ability of the businesses to accumulate even greater profits during this pandemic is not exactly reliant on their talent, but because of the opportunity that this pandemic times has brought them. And that sums up that this house is in favor of implementing excess profit taxes in the pandemic, and we rest our case.
Thank you all very much. May we now invite both sides to cross the house as our judges will tally the scores. There. I hope you guys had fun in the second round of today's debate, Catalyst versus the Charm. And this afternoon, we'll be having a round 3 of the debate competition. Charm, which is the government side, versus Power Rangers, the opposition side. And the topic would be, this house would set complete separation of properties as the default property regime for all marriages in the Philippines. There. So see you guys in the next round, and happy lunch, guys. Thank you.